Everyone, what's going on? If you're new to this channel, what I talk about is how the world that we live in is made up with mathematical patterns and mathematics in general. And if you pay enough attention to the signs and symbols and these patterns that exist within your own life, you can get a better understanding of the world. And a lot of this stuff stems back to ancient knowledge things such as Hermeticism, such as Kundalini, such as astrology. There's also what is called Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism that has a belief that God created the world by merging the letter with the number. And within Kabbalah, they practice what is called gematria, or gematria. It's the practice of coding numbers into words and phrases. And I show this all the time, but the reason it's important is it's just the practice of coding numbers. So G is the 7th letter, O the 15th, D the 4th. You add, 7, 15, and 4, you get 26. And right here is just the reverse. When you use Z as 1 and A is 26, right? A is the 26th letter. It's just the reverse. And this is the reduction method, also called Pythagoras gematria. And you just reduce it. So O is the 15th letter, so you just take 1 plus 5 equals 6, and that's how you get this method. So, an example would be the letter T. T is the 20th letter. 2 plus 0 is 2. And this is just reverse. But look at the word God here. The word God equals 55 and 10. And in Hermeticism, there's a belief that everything is the same, and everything is also the opposite. And look at Satan, and the other way, 55 and 10. And there's many, many other examples, such as the first man equals 10. And, God created man out of dust that equals 10. That's why Marilyn Manson has a song called Say and the number 10. Because he says, you say God, and I say 10. And he does study Kabbalah. So, just wanted to point out a few examples. And often I talk about how there are people in this world who understand this knowledge and they control what goes in front of us in the media, and that's how they are, controlling the population, controlling the world. They put signs and symbols and they code them with mathematics, and somehow it's affecting the consciousness of people, and it keeps us enslaved in this world that we are living in. They understand the mathematics of what is going on in the world. And anyway, the moral of the story here is that oftentimes I document in these videos how certain things that I notice that are personal to me are somehow synced up to what is going on within the mainstream media. And, it really makes sense. If you just pay enough attention, sometimes you're picking up on some certain type of frequency, some type of vibration. In Hermeticism, signs and symbols, letters, numbers, they all carry a certain vibration. And if you just pay enough attention, you can pick up on these patterns. And a prime example is in 2016, when pretty much all summer I was talking about how I thought the Indians would play the Cubs in the World Series. And there was this big Native American theme that was all connected to the area that I live in. It was synced up to Prince, the singer, who died on the 112th day of the year. And at the end of that season, it just so happened to be the 112th World Series, and Game 7 was on 11/2. And there was a whole bunch of other things. It was 1 year and 12 days after Back to the Future Day when the Cubs win the World Series, right? 112, and then they win the 112th World Series. But on the day of Game 7, I was talking about this all year long, how it was just synced up to the Indians and the Cubs. The only 2 movies I even went into the theaters were about this Native American theme called The Darkness, and then another movie about Chicago. And I didn't even really put it all together. But on the day of Game 7, we got a mainstream media article about these 2 police officers being murdered in Des Moines, Iowa. And it was right next to where I used to live. And when I lived there, I worked at Burger King that just so happened to equal 112. And right across the street from where I worked was the 1908 Drought Bar. And if you followed what I was talking about all summer, the Cubs hadn't won a World Series since the year 1908. It was all about 1908 and Grover Cleveland, because I believe Grover Cleveland died in the year 1908. And what are the odds? We get the story right by where I used to work. Where I worked equaled 112, and right across the street was the 1908 Drought Bar. Then Game 7 went to extra innings, and then it started raining, ending the drought, and the Cubs went on to win the World Series. Like, what are the odds of all that? What are the odds we get a mainstream story synced up to the air, like right next to where I used to live? And I was talking about this all summer, how it was connected. I even talked about how the 112 days before the 112th World Series, the Indians beat the Tigers 11-2 even. So there was just all kinds of stuff synced up to it. And I just bring that up because something similar happened just the other night in regards to this number 310. So back in November, I documented about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We got this story in the mainstream media about Sarah Michelle Gellar wearing a Thanksgiving lingerie post, and then she apologized for it. It was on November 22nd, and as a child, the movie Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I have a ton of memories. For some reason, it's a personal experience to me. I remember this movie. It used to be one of my favorite movies, even though many people think this movie sucks, right? But for whatever reason, I used to love this movie. I remember Ben Affleck was in the movie, and he hands the basketball to Buffy, and he says something like, "Here, take it," right? And so I knew there was something connected to that movie. It was something important that I was supposed to see with this movie. And right around the same time, just days before this, we got a story about David Arquette being in a bloody wrestling death match. And David Arquette, he's also in that movie, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So I was like, there's got to be something connected to Buffy the Vampire Slayer that's going to be coming up. Something important to it. And I documented how the TV show, it came out on March 10th, like 310. And if you read out Buffy the Vampire Slayer in Gematria, look at Buffy the Vampire Slayer, it equals 310 in Gematria. And the TV show premiered on 310. Also, in the TV show, which I never really got into, her friends are called the Scooby Gang. And think about Sarah Michelle Gellar being in Scooby-Doo as well. And if you write out 310 as words, it equals 79, just like if you read out Scooby-Doo. I thought that was interesting, right? Or maybe it was just Scooby, because it was the Scooby Gang and Scooby-Doo. But Scooby equaled 79. But there was something important to this number 310. I didn't know what it was. Then, on February 27th, we got the story about Luke Perry having a stroke, right? Luke Perry had a stroke. So Luke Perry's important because he was in the movie Buffy the Vampire Slayer, right? He was in the movie Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He just so happened to have a stroke on February 27th, which was 97 days after my post about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. 97 days. The reason that's interesting is because his name, Coy Luther Perry III, it also equals 97. And interesting, too, that story about Sarah Michelle Gellar was 223 days after or before her birthday, right? Luke Perry, 223. But this post was 97 days later. Luke Perry's full name equals 97. And he had a stroke that equals 25. And the 25th prime number is 97. So I was like, interesting that, something a few months later is connected to that Buffy the Vampire Slayer post. And then on March 4th, then, we got the death of Luke Perry. And what's so interesting about that is if you go from my Buffy the Vampire Slayer post to the day that he died, it's 3 months and 10 days later. So he dies 3 months, 10 days after my post about Buffy the Vampire Slayer that he is in. And Buffy the Vampire Slayer equals 310. And also the TV show Buffy the Vampire Slayer just so happened to air on the date of 310. So just pointing all this out here, 310. So the next day, we got a story about Corey Feldman in the mainstream media. And the reason it sticks out so much to me with Corey Feldman is just not even a week before, I'm pretty sure it's even in my last video that I put out, I talked about Sean Astin and the Goonies and how they were important to this theme with all kinds of stuff, right? The Duke Blue Devils and whatnot, and his mom being Patty Duke. But I talked about the Goonies, and then we get a story of Corey Feldman, who's also in the Goonies, defending Michael Jackson. And it came out that he tweeted this the same day that Luke Perry died, March 4th. And just think about him in regards to vampires, right? He's in the movie The Lost Boys. And he's in that movie with Corey Haim. And look, if you look up Corey Haim just so happened to die on March 10th, 310. What are the odds of that, right? Corey Haim dies on 310. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The Lost Boys, right? And think about The Lost Boys in regards to Michael Jackson and Neverland Ranch, right? Peter Pan and the Lost Boys, they go to Neverland. Also, Corey Feldman's, his campaign about Hollywood pedophilia was called the Indiegogo campaign. And if you write that out, Indiegogo campaign, it equals 310. And think about Michael Jackson. I've recently documented about the blackface stuff and how that was important. And Michael Jackson, I talk about MJ, right? Michael J. Fox and Michael Jordan, MJ. There was something important to all of that. And talked about how Michael Jordan retired from baseball on the date of 310. And it's connected to this Teen Wolf theme with the basketball player who plays for the Chicago Bulls now, named Zach LaVine, who did the Space Jam dunk when he was a Teen Wolf at the NBA All-Star game, or All-Star Week in 2015. So he's a Teen Wolf. Think about Michael J. Fox. But his birthday is also 310. And it was in the same year that Michael Jordan retired from baseball. So 310, 310, this date again. There's also some other interesting things in regards to these two movies, such as in the movie Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the guy that Pike, who is played by Luke Perry, he's on top of his van and the vampire gets his arm ripped off, right? And he's like he's pretty much the main vampire other than the head guy named Lothos in the movie. And anyway, that guy's played by Pee Wee Herman. And think about Pee Wee Herman in regards to child pornography and whatnot, right? Can't think of what, I should have wrote his real name in here, just everyone knows him by Pee Wee Herman, I assume. But that lead vampire at the very end of the movie during the credits, he's sitting there going, ooh, and as a kid, I always thought they were going to make a part 2 to this movie because that vampire never died. So, just something interesting about that. The guy who trains Buffy in the movie is Donald Sutherland, whose name is Merrick in the film, but he trains Buffy, right? And think about Donald Sutherland in the movie The Lost Boys that stars Kiefer Sutherland. And if you followed what I was talking about in 2017, I mentioned there was the Stand By Me theme that was going on in the mainstream media. And we had a story about Rose McGowan, and Rose McGowan was in the same cult called the Children of God that River Phoenix was in, and River Phoenix died on Halloween, and on Halloween we had Wendy Williams collapse, and Jerry O'Connell, another kid in the movie Stand By Me, was on her show when she collapsed. Then we got the story of Corey Feldman and all the child pornography, and the only person missing was Will Wheaton, and then Will Wheaton was on The Big Bang Theory just like the day afterward, and he hadn't been on there for over a season. And I said, you know, there's something important to it. Will Wheaton or Kiefer Sutherland. Then we got the Sutherland Springs church shooting on November 5th last year. So, you know, if you just follow these patterns and you can just figure out certain things and learn more of what is going on within this world. So, I guess the moral of the story, just pointing out that Donald Sutherland is Kiefer Sutherland's dad. And these two movies have this weird connection with Michael Jackson, right? The Lost Boys, Peter Pan, vampires. Think about how vampires, you know, live forever as well. Vampires, well, they don't necessarily live forever, but, you know, sort of, right? Just like in Neverland. And you don't necessarily live forever in Neverland either if you leave, you know, like in the movie Hook when Robin Williams leaves and gets old and whatnot. So I'm sure there's probably something I should look up within that movie too. The movie Hook is probably important to this, but I haven't had the time. So anyway, another reason I'm making this video here is I've never watched The Lost Boys 2 or The Lost Boys Part 3. And I thought I would watch The Lost Boys 2 and maybe in Part 3 and see if there was some hints or something in these movies. And I didn't even finish watching this movie. I started watching The Lost Boys 2, which is a terrible movie, by the way. It's nowhere near as good as the first one. I mean, maybe a little gorier or something, but it's just terrible. But I noticed that the vampires, like around the time that they're killing people, they whistle this song. And the only place I've ever heard this song, or at least it stands out to me, is from this TV show that my daughter loves called Troll Hunters. And I'll just play a clip of the song here really quick. This is what it is on Troll Hunters, and this is the exact same thing they whistle on the movie The Lost Boys 2. After they kill somebody, they do this. But I'll just play it really quick so you can hear it. Or maybe you can't hear it, I don't know if it's loud enough, but there's like this signature whistle that goes on within these two things, and I thought, that cannot be a coincidence, right? So I looked it up and I figured out where this song actually comes from, and it comes from this guy right here, Edvard Grieg. And it's for this play, this Norwegian play called Peer Gynt, and the song is called In the Hall of the Mountain King. And what's interesting right away is Peer Gynt equals 34. And think about how Feldman's tweet was on 3-4, Luke Perry dies on 3-4. But I went and looked this guy up. So look at this guy. Look at his name, Edvard Hagerup Grieg. And notice that he died age 64 on the date of 9-4. Now, let's look at his name in gematria here. Oh, unbelievable, huh? His name equals 310 in gematria, right? What are the odds of this? I'm talking about the number 310. I noticed this weird whistling thing in these two things, and I look up where the song comes from, and it comes from a guy whose name equals 310. And it's also interesting his name equals 94. Remember that he died on the date of 9-4 at the age of 64? He would have been 176 years old in 2019 as well. And he died at the age of 64. Look at his name. Without the middle name, it equals 64 even. You know, this guy died absolutely by this code. And I'm just mind blown that his name equals 310, you know? And the story of Corey Feldman was on March 5th, even though the tweet was on 3-4. The story that came out was on March 5th, and if you go from March 5th to this guy's, what would have been his 176th birthday, it's 3 months and 10 days. What are the odds of that? 3 months and 10 days, his name equals 310. This guy also died 9 months and 11 days before his birthday, and if you've been following what I've been talking about a lot recently too, with the Enes Kanter guy, the basketball player, it's all about the number, it's all about 9/11, and the number 310 was important to it. Osama bin Laden was also born on the date of 310. So, Osama bin Laden born on 310. Osama bin Laden, also very interesting in regards to, we've been talking a lot about this possible big date this year is August 11th. August 11th is the day when the Jewish holy festival of Tisha B'Av begins. It's all about the destruction of the two temples and remembrance of the two temples. And in Jewish gematria, it equals 911. Think about 9/11, the destruction of the two towers, right? And the Solomon Brothers building, and much, much more that goes along with it. But Osama bin Laden was born on 310, and if recently we got these stories about this Republican Omar and the thing with the memes with her in 9/11, and then we also got a story of Osama bin Laden's son rising up and being a leader of Al Qaeda and whatnot, and his name's Hamza bin Laden. But I looked up Osama bin Laden again, and I noticed that he became the leader of Al Qaeda on August 11th, 8/11. Right here. Research suggests that Al Qaeda was formed on August 11th of 1988. And if you go from the day that Osama bin Laden supposedly died to August 11th, it's 3 months and 10 days even, right? If you go from 310 to the August 11th, it's 5 months and 2 days. He died on 5/2. These kind of mirror days. Another thing that just recently happened to me that sticks out to me in regards to this is that back in February, I got a copyright strike from YouTube on a video like from 2011. So that video's been on since 2011. It really had nothing wrong with it. I don't understand why it would get a copyright strike or just a strike in general. It wasn't anything to do with copyright, but I got a strike on my channel, and just the other day I got this YouTube restricted my Allen Iverson video from 2015, and it's interesting for a number of reasons. His nickname is The Answer, right? And with the Michael Jordan stuff, I've documented a lot about the movie National Treasure and the city of Charlotte. And in the movie National Treasure, the secret lies with Charlotte. And if you write that phrase out, it equals 310 in gematria. And it comes from Charles Carroll III, who was the last guy to die who signed the Declaration of Independence, and he died 5 months and 6 days after his birthday, a lot like a 56, and he was the last of the 56 signers to die who signed the Declaration of Independence, and he died 56 years after signing it. And John Hancock, the first guy to sign it, he died age 56. There's all this stuff with 56, and in this video I talked all about 56 and Allen Iverson being, everything about Allen Iverson was connected to 56, like clear back to his high school days. You know, he even got in trouble at this bowling alley and went to jail and all kinds of stuff. Bowling alley equals 56, the name of the bowling alley equals 56. That's why he wears the number 3, because 3 equals 56, and, you know, dress code equals 56. Everything in his career was the number 56. And it's just interesting because the title of this video, I talk about Philadelphia and possibly foreshadowing the next false flag. So think about 9/11 in regards to false flag, and, you know, think about Osama bin Laden and 9/11 and 9/11 being a false flag. That same day that I got this restricted video, the Chicago Bulls, Michael Jordan's old team, was playing the 76ers even, and they won with Zach LaVine's game-winning shot. The Teen Wolf guy, the guy who was born on March 10th, right? So, and, I mean, just look at it. It's the 76ers. It was their 65th game of the season. Philadelphia in gematria equals 65, and Zach LaVine equals 65, and he made the game winner to beat the Philadelphia team even. So, I don't know. I'm just pointing it out. There's something important to why they did this to my Allen Iverson video, and Allen Iverson is even important to that Like Mike stuff I was talking about with the black face and everything else. So you have to be following me for a while to get it, but I'll leave some links in the description. It's a lot to go back and look at, but just wanted to point it out. Let's go back to this song over here then. So we got this whistling song. This guy's name equals 310, and, you know, the story of Corey Feldman comes before 3 months and 10 days before what would have been his birthday. If you go and look up this play that the song was written for, it premiered on February 24th of 1876. February 24th just so happens to be the day that leaves 310 days in the year, right? So what are the odds? 310 days. And as I was reading through this play, it is supposedly it's based loosely on an old Norwegian fairy tale called Per Gynt, and it involves stuff with trolls. And I remembered a long time ago that I was following this thing about trolls. There was a troll theme that was going on, and it was right around the time that the Trolls movie came out, and South Park was, their whole season was about Troll Trace or whatever, trolltrace.com. And it was right around the time that I was exposing Jeopardy too, like crazy. And I was starting to get a whole bunch of subscribers at that time, or it was a lot more than usual. And I was getting trolled like no other. And I find that interesting, and for the fact that Alex Trebek just came out and said that he had stage 4 cancer and whatnot. And remember, Alex Trebek equals 40, Jeopardy equals 40, and stage 4 equals 40. And he was also born in the year 40. And what I was talking about with Jeopardy at the time was this lady named Cindy Stowell that was on the show that had died after being on the show. And she also had stage 4 cancer or whatever. And a whole bunch of other stuff. It has a lot to do with the number 53. So, anyway, I just wanted to point out that this play is about trolls, and I had this troll theme back in 2016, and in that post, I mentioned how the guy who invented the troll doll died 102 days after his birthday, and his birthday was supposedly on October 2nd, 10/2. But notice it's also 3 months and 10 days, right? So once again, another 310 that's just oddly coming up and connected to all this, And, YouTube has completely changed this too. So let me find this post really quick. Or not YouTube, Wikipedia. And they do this all the time, I was getting trolled like crazy to look this stuff up, too. That's another thing that I was getting trolled like crazy to look this up, and then I look it all up and I go to Wikipedia, and Wikipedia says that this guy who invented the troll doll, at the time it said October 2nd to January 11th. And now when you go look it up, it's completely different. Like now it says this guy was born May 15th and died on November 12th. Now, why would they do that? Why is somebody on Wikipedia changing something in 2019 even of a guy who died clear back in the 80s, right? Or supposedly died in the 80s. Why would they do that? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. There's nothing new to update really to some, why would they update Beethoven? What is the point of updating Beethoven when there's nothing to update Beethoven with, right? It should be set in stone, the things that are written on there. It doesn't make any sense why they do this. And they do this all the time. They change stuff to fit certain narratives and patterns, right? It's because they are manipulating the way you see these things. There's no other way, And I talked about this with my Slipknot video back in 2015, how you can't even change anything on Wikipedia, because when you do, they just change it right back, even if it's source-cited and everything. Somebody changes it back and says that you can't put that on there. So anyway, just pointing out some of these odd things that are going on. And also in this post about trolls, it's the post where I last mentioned how I thought Ralphie May would die, and it was all in connection to The Big Lebowski and Jeff Bridges. And then Ralphie May did die within that next year, and it was all synced up to what I was talking about. And it's really synced up to bridge symbolism, Jeff Bridges. And this date of August 11th is really connected to Philadelphia and also San Francisco and the Golden Gate Bridge. And a lot of the stuff that it started with this post on this movie called Troll from 1986, and it's even set in San Francisco. And I pointed out how on this kid's wall, they have these San Francisco things and they're pointing down, right? And this movie, it came out on January 17th, and the word bridge equals 117. And, the other one is the Dallas Cowboys, and that's why this number 102 was important. But 102, The 9/11 supposedly lasted 102 minutes, and Al-Qaeda equals 102 at Gematria, so I don't know, just pointing that out. Plus this kid's name is Harry Potter Jr., and the Trolls movie, this Troll Doll movie, it came out on November 4th. The first Harry Potter movie also came out on November 4th. 114. 114 is really important to some other stuff, you know, World War equals 114, Holocaust, Pearl Harbor, Kim Jong-un, so. We just had the 114th World Series. The Red Sox, you know, it was synced up to the Red Sox and whatever, and the Red Sox won the World Series on 9/11, and it was just before World War I came to an end, and they beat the Chicago Cubs and whatnot. So I guess I'm looking out for this date here. I don't know if anything special is going to happen on March 10th, but it seems to be important, and it's connected to whatever I'm talking about. Maybe it's just pointing to August 11th or something else, but I'm definitely interested to see what happens on March 10th. See if we get any stories that involve like maybe a bridge or the royal family, something that I have been talking about. One of the main things that I'm talking about, I feel like, is really important to this number 310, especially with Allen Iverson being named the answer. And another interesting thing, another interesting 310 is Saint Francis of Assisi, who Pope Francis is named after, and also who San Francisco is named after. Let me see if I can find it here. His name equals 310, though. I can't remember what, it was in a different cipher. Let me find it here. Or maybe it wasn't. Saint Francis of Assisi equals 310. Let's type it out really quick. I want to see what cipher it was in. Saint Francis of Assisi. Yeah, he equals 310. And San Francisco is named after this guy. Pope Francis is named after this guy. That's why in Gematria, San Francisco equals 122, located on 122 degrees west. That's why when you write out Pope Francis, it equals 122. You know, so think about the Golden Gate, and the Jews believe the Messiah is going to return through the Golden Gate. That's why Pope Francis visited the United States in the 239th year of the United States, because in Jewish Gematria, if you write out Golden Gate, it equals 239. And there's also some connections to Turkey, the country Turkey and Golden Gate, and Turkey in Satanic Gematria equals 310. So, and think about my Sarah Michelle Gellar post. It was a tweet about her lingerie for Thanksgiving, right? And think about turkey and Thanksgiving. So, I don't know. There's something important to what I'm documenting. I'm trying to figure out what exactly the pattern means, you know, but there's so many times where I talk about stuff and then it just starts appearing within the mainstream media, you know. So I know that I'm on point. I just have to be able to figure this out a little bit better, you know. Thanksgiving equals 141, just like World War III and whatnot. And, you know, 310 is also the 69th day of the year, which is interesting. And World War III equals 156, which 156 prime number is 911, right? So there's a lot of interesting things going on with it. So we'll leave the video there. I might make a quick video on this Chelsea Manning story. Just whatever. All the transgender stories are all coded to the same thing. So we'll see what happens. Keep following the pattern. We'll look out for May 10th or March 10th and see if we get any big stories or what's going on with it. So have a good one. Peace.